Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. We're tearing through some impeachment highlights, and we're not going to get
You're only in second gear, though.
I know, we're only in second gear. We haven't even really turned it up a notch yet. We're going to have trouble getting through everything, so I'm going to have to jettison a couple clips. I've kind of explained the Dershowitz argument. You'll hear it again this week if you're paying attention to this stuff. But, there were four gentlemen who spoke on behalf of the president. That was Pat Cipollone, Jay Sekulow. Now, those two are the main counsel. Then they had Patrick Philbin, also White House counsel. He talked about the invalidity of the subpoenas, which I've kind of explained to you. And for time purposes, we're not going to have a chance to get to his clip because it's about a 4-minute clip where he explains it. And that was me having cut it down to about 4 minutes, by the way, to try and really get the meat of the argument to you. But I've already explained that. There was also a gentleman named Michael Purpura who is fantastic. I really liked his style. And we've got a couple of clips from him that we're going to play because he really nailed it in the impeachment. Before we jump into that, during the break, Pat, I was telling you, if you haven't gone to see that movie 1917 on World War I went to see it Saturday, and it is amazing. What a fantastic
Well, I'm glad you said that because my
movie.
son's returning next week sometime, and he'll be for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go watch that with him.
You got to go see it and watch how long it is before they even ever cut. I mean, they have like a 20 or 30-minute one camera initial scene, and it's just amazing. The setup for that shot must have just taken, dozens of hours of planning. It is an amazing shot, and the whole movie is that way, and it's a fantastic movie. But now let's jump back to impeachment, and let's hear some from Michael Purpura, who I think was probably the best of all of the White House counsel representing the president at the impeachment over the weekend. And keep in mind, the Democrats have had 24 hours of time before the Senate to put forward their case. And by the way, there's a lot that they have not shared with the senators, and I think Michael Purpura does a great job of highlighting the facts that they didn't share with the Senate. Now, in about 2.5 hours on Saturday, the four White House counsel who got a chance to speak basically destroyed the entire Democrat case. They eviscerated it, as some have put it. So let's hear some of that evisceration, and this will really give you a flavor for the way things went on Saturday. Here's Michael Purpura.
As you know, head of state calls are staffed by a number of aides on both sides. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a detailee at the National Security Council, raised a concern about the call. And that was just a policy concern. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman admitted that he did not know whether there was a crime or anything of that nature, but he had deep policy concerns. Policy concerns. So there you have it. But the president sets the foreign policy. In a democracy such as ours, the elected leaders make foreign policy while the unelected staff, such as Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, implement the policy. Other witnesses were on the July 25 call and had very different reactions than that of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, National Security Advisor to the Vice President, former acting National Security Advisor, and a long-serving and highly decorated veteran, attended the call. According to General Kellogg, I was on the much-reported July 25 call between President Donald Trump and President Zelensky. As an exceedingly proud member of the Trump administration, of President Trump's administration, and as a 34-year, highly experienced combat veteran who retired with the rank of Lieutenant General in the Army, I heard nothing wrong or improper on the call. I had and have no concerns. The House managers said that other witnesses were also troubled by the July 25 call and identified those witnesses as Jennifer Williams and Tim Morrison. Jennifer Williams, who works for Lieutenant General Kellogg, now claims that she has concerns about the call. You heard that from the House managers. They were very careful in the way they worded that. What they didn't tell you is that Ms. Williams was so troubled at the time of the call that she told exactly 0 people of her concern. She told no one for 2 months following the call. Not one person. Ms. Williams didn't raise any concerns about the call when it took place, not with Lieutenant General Kellogg, not with counsel, not with anyone.
Think about that.
Ms. Williams waited to announce her concerns until Speaker Pelosi publicly announced her impeachment inquiry. The House managers didn't tell you that. Why not? Tim Morrison, who was Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's boss, was also on the call. Mr. Morrison reported the call to the National Security Council lawyers not because he was troubled by anything on the call, but because he was worried about leaks, and in his words, how it would play out in Washington's polarized environment. I want to be clear, Mr. Morrison testified, I was not concerned that anything illegal was discussed. Mr. Morrison further testified that there was nothing improper and nothing illegal about anything that was said on the call. In fact, Mr. Morrison repeatedly testified that he disagreed with Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's assessment that President Trump made demands of President Zelensky, or that he said anything improper at all. Here's Mr. Morrison.
In that transcript, does the president not ask Zelensky to look into the Bidens?
Mr. Chairman, I can only tell you what I was thinking at the time. That is not what I understood the president to be doing.
Do you believe, in your opinion, that the President of the United States demanded that President Zelensky undertake these investigations?
No, sir.
And you didn't hear the president make a demand, did you?
No, sir.
Again, there were no demands from your perspective, Mr. Morrison.
That is correct, sir.
But is it fair to say that as you were listening to the call, you weren't thinking, wow, the president is bribing the president of Ukraine? That never crossed your mind?
It did not, sir.
Or that he was extorting the president of the Ukraine?
It did not, sir.
Or doing anything improper?
Correct, sir.
Significantly, the Ukrainian government never raised any concerns about the July 25 call. Just hours after the call, Ambassador William Taylor, head of the U.S. mission in Ukraine, had dinner with the then Secretary of the Ukrainian National Security and Defense Council, who seemed to think that the call went fine, the call went well. He wasn't disturbed by anything. The House managers didn't tell you that. Why not? Ambassador Kurt Volker, the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine, was not on the call. But Ambassador Volker spoke regularly with President Zelensky and other top officials in the Ukraine government, and even met with President Zelensky the day after the call. He testified that in no way, shape, or form, in either the readouts from the United States or Ukraine, did he receive any indication whatsoever for anything that resembles a quid pro quo on the July 25 call. Here's Ambassador Volker.
And in fact, the day after the call, you met with President Zelensky. This would be on July 26th.
That's correct.
And in that meeting, he made no mention of quid pro quo.
No.
He made no mention of withholding the aid.
No.
He made no mention of bribery.
No.
So the fact is the Ukrainians were not even aware of this hold on aid. Is that correct?
That's correct.
They didn't tell you about this testimony from Ambassador Volker. Why not? President Zelensky himself has confirmed on at least 3 separate occasions that his July 25 call with President Trump was a good phone call and normal, and that nobody pushed me. When President Zelensky's advisor, Andrei Yermak, was asked if he had ever felt there was a connection between the U.S. military aid and the request for investigations, he was adamant that we never had that feeling, and we did not have the feeling that this aid was connected to any one specific issue. Of course, the best evidence that there was no pressure or quid pro quo is the statements of the Ukrainians themselves. The fact that President Zelensky himself felt no pressure on the call and did not perceive there to be any connection between security assistance and investigations would, in any ordinary case, in any court, be totally fatal to the prosecution. The judge would throw it out, the case would be over. What more do you need to know?
That's exactly right. What more do you need to know? The Ukrainians didn't feel any pressure. They didn't know there's a quid pro quo. How do you have a quid pro quo when the other side doesn't even know it, right? And I loved his style. I mean, I really thought he was very effective when he was saying they didn't tell you that, why not? And we got another clip for him. It's going to be a little long. We're not going to get to all of it before the break, but I'm going to get it started, then I'm going to try to pause it and carry it over to the Out There segment, because this is where Michael Purpura starts to tear apart the Democrat evidence and their talking points about what Ambassador to the EU Gordon Sondland said. Let's hear.
We know there was no quid pro quo on the July 25 call. We know the Ukrainians did not know that security assistance had been paused at the time of the call. There is simply no evidence anywhere that President Trump ever linked security assistance to any investigations. Most of the Democrats' witnesses have never spoken to the president at all, let alone about Ukraine security assistance. The two people in the House record who asked President Trump about whether there was any linkage between security assistance and investigations were told in no uncertain terms that there's no connection between the two. When Ambassador to the European Union Gordon Sondland asked the president in approximately the September 9 timeframe, the president told him, I want nothing, I want nothing, I want no quid pro quo. Even earlier, on August 31, Senator Ron Johnson asked the president if there was any connection between security assistance and investigations. The president answered, no way. I would never do that. Who told you that? Two witnesses, Ambassador Taylor and Tim Morrison, said they came to believe security assistance was linked to investigations. But both witnesses based this belief entirely on what they heard from Ambassador Sondland before Ambassador Sondland spoke to the president. Neither Taylor nor Morrison ever spoke to the president about the matter. How did Ambassador Sondland come to believe that there was any connection between security assistance and investigations? Again, the House managers didn't tell you. Why not? In his public testimony, Ambassador Sondland used variations of the words assume, presume, guess, speculate, and belief over 30 times. Here are some examples.
That was my presumption, my personal presumption. That was my belief. That was my presumption, yeah.
Is that
I said
right?
I presume that might have to be done in order to get the aid released. It was a presumption. I've been very clear as to when I was presuming, and I was presuming on the aid. It would be pure, guesswork on my part, speculation. I don't know. That was the problem, Mr. Goldman. No one told me directly that the aid was tied to anything. I was presuming it was.
Didn't show you any of this testimony, not once during their 21-hour presentation. 21 hours, more than 21 hours. And they couldn't give you the context to evaluate Ambassador Sondland. All the Democrats have to support the alleged link between security assistance and investigations is Ambassador Sondland's assumptions and presumptions. We remember this exchange.
Is it correct no one on this planet told you that Donald Trump was tying this aid to the investigations? Because if your answer is yes, then the chairman's wrong and the headline on CNN is wrong. No one on this planet told you that President Trump was tying aid to investigations. Yes or no?
Yes.
So, you really have no testimony today that ties President Trump to a scheme to withhold aid from Ukraine in exchange for these investigations.
Other than my own presumption.
When he was done presuming, assuming, and guessing, Ambassador Sondland finally decided to ask President Trump directly, what does the president want from Ukraine? Here's the answer.
President Trump, when I asked him the open-ended question, as I testified previously, what do you want from Ukraine? His answer was, I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. That's all I got from President Trump.
Think about that. This whole impeachment thing is a sham. There goes Article 1 right out the door. We told you about Article 2. That's nonsense as well. This whole thing is a made-up sham. It's a sham. They don't have a case. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.